I'm being told to start over, so sorry about that. This is Rick Todd with the Trucking Association. Welcome everybody to the call. I'll be quick, then I'll turn it over to Taryn, let her moderate. As you well understand, we're doing everything we can here to monitor what's going on around the country. We're in touch with ATA on a federal level, our peers in the other states continuously, and are communicating with our federal partners, that being FMCSA, and our state partners from the governor's office throughout the various state agencies. One, to monitor what's going on, to kind of use best practices to ponder what we need to be doing here to keep the trucks rolling, while health and safety considerations, of course, are paramount, and compile all the stuff and get the information to you in as close to real time as we can. I know you're overwhelmed with information from other sources, so we're trying to cull through and give you what you might not be getting from some other. So we want to thank particularly FMCSA, Transport Police, our state DOT, SLED, Emergency Management Division, of course the Governor's Office, and DMV. DMV has been one of the last to come around because they have been in contact with the Governor's Office in terms of what their statutory authority is and what even power the Governor might have to suspend the expiration periods on credentials like registrations for trucks, renewals, titling, and what have you. They will be issuing a public notice this afternoon. We'll get that to you as soon as it's made public on an extension. We do expect that, so more to come on that. So Taryn, it's yours, and thanks again for everybody's help.
Thanks, Rick, for the update, and thank you to all of you on the call today. We know you're busy, and we'll keep this brief. On the call, we have South Carolina Division Administrator David West and South Region Administrator John Dierberger with the FMCSA, as well as Colonel Leroy Taylor and Captain Dean Dill with the State Transport Police. We're going to ask that you submit any questions throughout the call today, and we'll through the chat window, and we'll spend time at the end answering as many as we can. There may be instances where we will need to regroup and get back to you after the call. Just bear with us as we navigate this time. You've all probably started hearing or reading from our newsletters, we hope, the extensions, waivers, and enforcement notices from the feds and the changes here in the state as they pertain to relief efforts, size and weight, credentialing, and more. We're going to have the FMCSA start off the call today with an overview of the most recent changes. David and John?
All right, thanks, Taryn. This is John Dierberger. I'll cover 3 notices that came out here very recently. They were completed last night, published this morning. First, I want to review the emergency declaration because that was expanded, and that's something that we're continuing to expand through the FAQs. So I would encourage the folks on the call to check in on FMCSA's website under the emergency declarations pages and take a look at the FAQs because we are receiving many questions from industry and other stakeholders. And as those questions are answered, we're posting updates to the frequently asked questions page. But FMCSA initially responded with an emergency declaration that waived medical supplies related to the COVID-19 response, transportation of medical personnel, patients related to COVID, sanitation, cleaning products, food, and temporary housing quarantine facilities. It did not, in that initial declaration, permit mixed loads. With the expanded declaration that went into effect, that was issued March 18th, mixed loads are now approved for transportation under the waiver, provided that the non-emergency goods are not just a small quantity of material. The primary purpose of the load needs to be for emergency relief. But what we found from feedback from industry is that typically groceries will order mixed loads for restocking of grocery stores. The food was the critical element in terms of response to the emergency. Having some non-emergency goods on a truck is fine under the expanded declaration. Transportation of fuel was added to the emergency declaration, and we also added immediate precursor materials used in the manufacture of emergency supplies and goods. So paper for toilet paper, for example, sanitation products, alcohol for, as an example, for sanitizers, plastic for making masks, but immediate precursor materials. Sense in terms of managing driver fatigue, vehicle condition, but those areas are exempt when operating in direct emergency relief. That emergency declaration does not cover CDL, drug and alcohol testing, and hazardous materials. There are also portions of industry that continue to do non-emergency commercial transportation that's critical to the economy. It's not part of the direct emergency relief, but we're having issues with CDL offices that aren't doing renewals because the personnel are not there to do the renewals, or because of the social distancing that folks are observing. So FMCSA, as of today, posted 3 notices of waivers. Number 1, a waiver for states, CDL holders, CLP holders, commercial learner permit holders, and non-CDL interstate drivers operating CMVs. That waiver extends the expiration date through June 30th, 2020 for CDLs and commercial license permit holders for drivers who have valid permits or CDLs on February 29th, whose CDLs or permits are expiring on or after March 1st. They're good through June 30th of this year. It waives the 14-day waiting period for his commercial learner's permit to do a road test. It waives the medical certification requirement for drivers as long as they have a medical certificate that was good for at least 90 days, so none of those very short-term medicals, which generally indicate some sort of requirement to see a doctor for follow-up. But as long as the driver has at least a 90-day medical and it expires on or after March 1st, 2020, and was valid on February 29th, then we waive the requirement that the driver get an immediate medical re-examination, once again through June 30th. So those expired medicals, because of the difficulty of getting an exam right now, are good through June 30th, as long as they were valid on February 29th and it expired March 1st or after. And it's a 90-day medical. I do recommend that in order to show roadside officers that you had a valid medical at the time, it'd be a good idea to carry a copy of that medical examination card if the driver's got it, or a copy of the CDL record if it's posted to the CDL record. We're also waiving the requirement that states downgrade CDLs due to the medical expiration, or to record not certified for drivers whose medicals have expired on February 29th. It was expired on March 1st, 2020 going forward. And finally, FMCSA is issuing a notice of enforcement discretion to FMCSA personnel. Through June 30th, 2020, FMCSA will not take enforcement for drivers that hold a valid CDL on February 29th, 2020, or a valid operator's license, and the license expires on or after March 1st, 2020. Now, the thing about that waiver, FMCSA has a statutory authority to extend the expiration date for licenses that are at the maximum renewal period of 8 years. Most of the states in the South have 8-year licenses. There's a little bit of statutory issue with states that are issuing licenses that are less than 8 years. And because of that, FMCSA also issued a notice of an enforcement notice for expiring CDLs that are for these state licenses that are issued for periods of less than 8 years. Once again, through June 30th, 2020, FMCSA will not enforce expired CDLs if they were valid on February 29th and expire on or after March 1st, 2020. They're good through June 30th. The same for non-CDLs. If a non-CDL driver's license expires on or after March 21st, it's good through June 30th, 2020. And between the waiver for drivers and states and then this enforcement notice, basically anybody who had a valid license on February 29th and it expires on March 1st going forward, and the same for the medical certificate, as long as it's at least a 90-day certificate, those drivers are good, and the motor carriers employing those drivers are good through June 30th, 2020. And then the last notice came from FMCSA, Pipelines and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. FMCSA does the hazmat regulations. FMCSA enforces those regulations when it comes to the mode for highway transportation. FMCSA issued a notice, and FMCSA is observing that notice of no enforcement for recurring hazardous materials training due to difficulties in conducting the training and the testing during this period. So effective for 90 days as of yesterday, no enforcement of the requirement for hazmat drivers for their recurrent hazardous materials training and for other personnel that conduct hazmat safety functions. FMCSA is encouraging motor carriers to utilize alternative training methods, self-study, online training, but where we can't do the testing, it's not being required. And with that, I'll just recap quickly. The original emergency declaration has been expanded. We now allow mixed loads, fuel, immediate precursor materials, FAQs. Look at the FAQs, check in periodically for updates on what's some of the questions that we're getting about what is or is not a precursor material, for example. Waivers for CDLs and medical certificates have been issued, and enforcement discretion has been issued. If a driver has a valid medical certificate, CDL, or commercial's license permit as of February 29th, and it expires on March 1st going forward, it's good through June 30th. And then lastly, no enforcement actions will be taken for failing to do the recurrent hazardous materials training during this period. Any questions?
There are not any questions submitted at this moment, John. But don't forget that you can use the Q&A or raise your hand. I may unmute the lines at the end just in case people have only called in. Okay? David, did you have any commentary to add?
Yes, I can just checking to see if everyone can hear me. I've been hanging out on the phone line all by myself. It seems like didn't know I was there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Everybody else is muted right now, is why it seems lonely.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to discuss previously issued documents that were related to the declaration for the national emergency on the FMCSA page. Drug and alcohol testing guidance from the Office of Drug and Alcohol Policy and Compliance, ODEPSI, as we like to give everything an acronym, has posted guidance for the relating to the drug and alcohol testing regulation on our national emergency. Drug and alcohol testing regulations are not being waived at this point, but a negative pre-employment test is still required in order for drivers to operate. Other tests are being postponed, like random, if you can't get them done within this period, but the negative pre-employment test is still being required at this time. That could change, but we don't know until that guidance comes out. Also, notice to state driver's license agencies of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's policy regarding the effect of actions during the COVID-19 emergency. Basically, the three specific issues the states can extend the expiration dates for driver's license and CDL learner's permit. They are able to renew online. And we will not hold the state in a violation. We will not issue a finding during this time frame. And also, if state does not change the medical certification or status or downgrade CDL due to the medical examiner certificate having expired. We've issued a waiver in that regard, as John Dierberger previously discussed. And notice of enforcement, discretion related to the temporary operating authority. If companies are applying for a temporary authority that does not have the authority to haul property, at this point, we're waiving those fees. An example would be if passenger carriers, a motor coach, is requesting temporary authority to assist in transporting property in the assistance of the COVID-19 emergency effort relief. We are waiving those fees and allowing passenger carriers to operate temporary authority. As Mr. Dierberger said previously, we are constantly updating the frequently asked questions, so we are asking that you consistently check our website, even if you think that you know what a frequently asked question and answer is. I am asking that you might want to visit the website and take a look again, because we're constantly updating the frequently asked questions to make sure that the guidance remains in effect, or if there's been any changes to it. Also, we have emergency declaration questions, like we're asking you to give us questions. If you can put those questions in writing and send them specifically to an email address, which is FMCSA declaration, one word, FMCSA declaration @dot.gov. That's FMCSA DECLARATION, FMCSA declaration @dot.gov. If you can help us out by providing that information to all the members, and if they don't have it, or if you got one, reach out to another one. Any questions that you may come up with, you can get them to Taryn, you can get them to Mr. Rick Todd, and then they can provide them to me. My name is David West. I'm a division administrator with South Carolina. My email address is david.west@dot.gov, david.west@dot.gov. And given the urgency of the emergency and everybody being in an emergency status and whatnot, we're having conference calls and meetings all over the place. So probably the best way to get your questions answered will be to email one of us, or both of us, or all of us, and then that way we can get the answer back down the pipe to you. And I'd like to say to everybody, thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. We're all figuring this out. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you on the other side of this.
Thank you, David.
And I'd just like to echo David's comments. It's John Dierberger again. The administrator has been in constant touch with the industry associations, with industry. When there were concerns about rest areas being closed, fuel stops being closed, DOT held a conference call with all the state governors. Acting Administrator Jim Mullen spoke to governors, emphasized the importance of keeping facilities open. We had states like Pennsylvania that reopened rest areas for truck parking. We had Mississippi that resumed CDL processing operations. So we are doing our best to support the very important work that the trucking companies, that the motor carriers, that everybody in the transportation industry is doing. You truly are on the front line, and thank you very much for continuing to keep things going during this period. That's it.
Gentlemen, we do have one question regarding the random testing suspension. Is that through June 30th as well, or can you give us some guidance on that specific topic?
Let me double check that figure, and I'll get back to you.
I was actually scrolling through it myself. While we double check that answer, I'll turn it over to Colonel Leroy Taylor and Captain Dean Dill to cover state enforcement issues and what they're seeing on intrastate changes, et cetera.
Thank you. Rick Todd, I certainly appreciate the opportunity, and this is Colonel Taylor with the State Transport Police. And Rick Todd alluded to it earlier, and I can't say enough about his constant involvement and contact this office and other state and federal offices. He's certainly been involved from the Trucking Association side, making sure that things are being done in a fair and equitable way to continue to operate safely, safe trucking in the state of South Carolina. So I applaud Rick Todd for his efforts in continuing to move forward. We are facing some unprecedented times. We certainly haven't seen anything as such that we're facing today, not in our lifetimes anyway. But so having said that, I am so grateful that our federal leaders and our state leaders recognize the value in trucking, the value in safe trucking. And I just wanted to echo a couple of things and make sure you guys realize that you're not out here alone. We support what you do. We will continue to support what you do. And if there's ever a benefit of the doubt to be given roadside in these times, especially in these trying times, we're going to always give you guys the benefit. You're certainly bringing the goods to keep our not only the economy moving, but you keeping our livelihood afloat. So we applaud you and we appreciate you for that. Most of you know the South Carolina DMV system. When a medical cert is not on file, that system is set up to automatically downgrade from a CDL. However, and that's probably what Rick Todd alluded to earlier about some more information coming out later. But I've been in contact with our DMV here, and because of the recent waiver that John Dierberger spoke about with the CDL waiver and the medical certs, DMV now is in the process of reprogramming their system not to automatically downgrade a CDL as a result of expiration or no medical cert on file. Now, as long as the CDL has been valid up to February 29th of this year, then that system will no longer automatically downgrade. Now, what does that mean for roadside? Whether the system kicks in or not, guys, I can tell you, I touched on it earlier, we're dealing with some unprecedented times now, and our guys have been encouraged to use the utmost common sense when approaching these issues, give the benefit of the doubt to the trucker. As long as he's operating in a safe manner, we're going to give that benefit of the doubt to the truck driver as regards to downgrade medical cert. So, in addition to that, most
as a lot of you may know, we do have a 90,000-pound weight waiver for anybody who's providing support right now. So something is that 90,000 pounds is also being allowed on the unprecedented dates. We talked with DOT about this this past week, and the state law actually identifies the exemption for non-interstate routes. So what they've done is on their website, they've put a blanket permit there that anybody can go in there and print out, which allows for the weight of 90,000 pounds on the interstates. Now, being this situation is what it is, we have talked with our officers, and if somebody's operating in relief of the emergency, we're not going to hold them to the 80,000 pounds if they don't have this permit with them. The permit's good just to show us, but our officers know that if they're operating within the emergency relief, that we're not going to be taking enforcement action if they don't have that permit on them. As Colonel said, we've been communicating with our officers daily about all these exemptions, and we're going to follow all the guidance that's been put out by FMCSA.
Out to us, and I know most of you know this to each and every day, and so we're here for you, and don't hesitate to let us know. Again, if you're not able to go to the website and pull that permit off of there, don't sweat it. As you operate, you transporting good as a result of COVID, be good to go. We're not going to hold you up. Again, if it's tied to you, so you keep our families safe. And I think what you people.
Don't forget to text us questions. Back to the question about the random testing suspension. As the guidance for random, it can be conducted later, specifically at the next available opportunity, random testing later in a selection period, follow-up testing later in the month. Here's also the solutions.
So on that, pre-employment, but for any of the tests with regards to random and other tests, basically what the guidance, the ODAT call is saying, defer the testing until you can complete it. There's no specific time frame. I will say that FMCSA is working on some additional guidance specific to FMCSA testing. The guidance coming out of ODAT is heard. Any testing that you limit to test until you are able to do so.
John, I don't know if we want to mention, but they actually suggested too that as a best practice should conserve if the facility.
That's
but
correct.
I want to say this: they're not saying don't do your random. They're saying if you cannot do it, they will understand. Anything that's it always is stated in everything is document. If you can't do something, or if there's a complication, make sure that you document everything. All right.
My staff has been given direction, that as long as you have documented, as Taryn has said, we will take that into consideration. We're going to do just like state transport police. When it comes time to compliance review, we're all in uncharted waters here. We're going to do our part. We only ask that you do your part. Have it. We all understand. We just ask that you do your best, communicate it, and for what happens, in the chain, we'll take that all into consideration when that the time comes.
I want to for being on the call today. Thank you to FMCSA State Transport Police, Rick Todd, all of those who aren't participating, that we're working closely with, the questions answered and keeping going. All of our members, general, we're here for you. If you need anything, I'll give you his CSA. Don't hesitate to email Rick or myself or any of our state partners and federal partners. Thank you. Out an update shortly, hopefully to include some DMV language, but that may occur at a later time. And we will see you on the next one. We'll be doing these as often as necessary. Gentlemen, for joining us this afternoon. And stay well.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite, and once again, thank you to everybody in the industry for keeping the.
I would echo
And
that.
thank
you. Thank you.
And thank you, State Transport.